back to another episode of the Next Gen podcast. Today we're going to talk a little bit about tassel time decisions, both on the insect side of things and then also diseases and crop fertility overall. If you haven't tissue sampled throughout the year yet, this is always a really good time to kind of gauge whether or not you're shorting the crop something. And we actually have a tissue sampling tool called Picketa, and so we use a lens unit. And what we're able to do with that unit is actually scan the leaves and get using a couple different spectrums of light, get a measurement on how much light is reflected off of that leaf, and assign different nutrient levels to each nutrient. And what we've seen so far after I guess this is our second year kind of demoing that, double ground truthing, double checking, and developing improving that algorithm on the tissue sampling side. We've actually gained a lot of confidence in it. I'd say this year made a big improvement on corn. I feel like N, P, and K are very they've been almost the exact same as what Midwest Labs is telling us as far as nutrient levels, percentages, and parts per million. So, and sulfur's been really accurate. Boron and manganese have been pretty accurate. Zinc's one where I feel like the lens unit will read it just a little bit lower than what it is really out there. And that's why over half the samples that we scan, we're actually sending to Midwest Labs to double check to make sure we got that correlation spot on. So really excited about it. Really the biggest advantage in doing that is that now you have, you can get back a deficient or low by yield goal on all the nutrients, both the NPK, but also all the micros and secondary nutrients, and you get it the same day. So it's kind of a tailgate tissue test, as I like to call it. It gives you that full insight to all the nutrients in the plant in a quick snapshot view. So being able to have that the same day, I know a lot of guys, that we're working with right now, they'll have us run that system on their leaves, and then if they're going over that field in the next week or 10 days, they're able just to add another nutrient or something else in that tank mix and know really instantaneously if they need to be adding something, rather than sending a tissue sample off to a lab and then waiting sometimes a full week before you get results back.
Yeah, that's the biggest advantage of that. I mean, we can do same day testing here, and that's such a huge advantage because we're not waiting, like you said, a week, or even towards the end of the week where you're holding off maybe a plane going through or a sprayer of some sort or getting your pump started. We know that day what deficiency you might have, and we can make a good agronomic decision that day. So that's huge. That's a game changer because by the time you collect them, then if something comes up, you miss the window, maybe they don't get shipped till the next day, then they got to sit in they sit in a truck, or the conditions favor to not maybe getting a complete or a accurate analysis just with all the variables in. So we found that that's been a lot of value to our customers, is making that same day decision.
Yeah, and when we were pulling, weekly tissue samples throughout the whole year, when we were, helping with the next level program, it was kind of alarming how often we'd see an anomaly through the lab where, maybe one week it would, for example, like zinc would drop way down and be deficient, and they'd say most limiting factor is zinc. And so your most limiting nutrient is zinc, and you want to go out there and you want to correct it, especially if you're shooting for high yield goals. but then that next week we'd see it elevated right back up to where the other, the previous 4 or 5 samples were too. So there can be that anomaly with Picketa. It also enables us to double check that. Like if we want to do, maybe we do the same field like twice throughout the day to see, okay, that's an anomaly. We don't need to be going out there and spending money trying to correct a deficiency. So it really is, and this is kind of why we manage around tissue sampling the same way as we really want to apply and spend money off of trends, not just a 1 week flash of, hey, this nutrient's low. And that's especially true with a lot of the mobile nutrients because where our corn is growing so fast right now. I mean, it's almost a new leaf per day. It seems like, during this time of season, and we've got plenty of heat here last week and all of this week too. So we're growing very rapidly, and what'll happen is that those newest developed leaves, even if that's got a fully developed collar, but that node isn't all the way spaced out yet, it's still putting nutrients in that leaf. So that's why we see that paler leaf before it's completely unrolled, or sometimes even when it's after it's fully developed and unrolled. It takes that corn plant a little bit to move those nutrients to that leaf. So we don't want to just be, over applying based off of a snapshot tissue test. So yeah, we want to make sure that if we see that trend of we're consistently low in zinc, for example, and if we're there for 2 weeks, or with Picketa maybe 3 samples in a row throughout 1 week, like, okay, we know this is truly deficient. It's not going to be able to move that nutrient. So that's a good example of where we might actually go out and make an application.
Yeah, and on another scenario too, if we know we are going to apply something, or last year, we had a guy come in here and he brought some samples over and tried it, and he was low on sulfur, and so he went out and applied sulfur and just through the pivot. I think he just did some thio, some 120026. Majority of it, maybe it might have been a half blend with nitrogen.
Yeah, I think he was originally just going to go out there with 32.
Yeah.
And then, or maybe it was 28005. And then when we had a couple tissue samples come back that low on sulfur, and that was when we made the recommendations like, hey, you might probably want to spike that with a little bit more sulfur.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we did take a tissue, so I think we probably brought it in on like Monday, probably got it applied like Wednesday. And I think we took another tissue test Friday and didn't really see any uptake yet. But when we're chemigating or fertigating, I mean, it's got to get applied, it's got to go down, get incorporated into the soil, and then get absorbed by the leaves, and then by then, we do have more growth coming on. And by that time it might have been post tassel anyway. But I mean, it's like, well, I think we jumped the gun a little too early on the second tissue test, just because by the time it gets into the soil, gets into the roots, and then it gets to the growth, like it's going to take a little bit. So
Right. I think a really good rule of thumb is to plan on, which I'm glad you brought that up, because the time it takes a nutrient to actually affect a tissue sample is somewhat unknown out there, and it varies a lot by application. So kind of what we've learned also through using the, that the light reflectance tissue sampling, or the lens unit, is that we can expect a pretty decent spike on any nutrient and it might be short lived. It might only spike it for a week. But if it's through fertigation, a lot of times 10 days is kind of the average. Might be able to see it in 8 or 9, but it could take up as long as 11 or 12 days. So really 10 days is a good average. So know when you're pumping fertilizer through the pivot, it's going to be 10 days before it gets into the plant. Wide drop, you're cutting that about in half. So you're closer to that 5 to 6 day range. And then obviously a foliar, we've seen that even the very next day, spike that tissue level in whatever nutrient we were applying. Don't really have enough data to say, a certain nutrient can spike quicker, but just as a good rule of thumb, that's kind of what we like to use for foliar applications, 1 day to get into the plant. Wide drop or banded applications, 2 to 3, can be as long as 5, and then, but very moisture dependent too. And then, fertigation applications, 10 days.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. Uh, it's kind of it's kind of funny. I was gonna do the backstory of how we met those guys. So they're that Picketa's up. They're a company out of Canada, and the Commodity Classic was in Denver here a couple years. I guess it was like what or when did they do it? February of 25, somewhere February,
Yeah.
early March.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
I mean, I think it was we were just there for like an afternoon and then basically a morning. But I mean, we kind of went through everything. You see all the John Deere booths. I mean, they got the big tractors in there. It's kind of amazing how they can get all this equipment in this building. That was the one thing that amazed me there. So I mean, obviously they got all their booths, Case, Bayer. Yeah, I mean, everybody has this. They all rent these giant spaces, and then like the very last. I mean, we're getting ready to leave. It's probably the last hour we're going to be there. Maybe there's this little booth back in the corner, and we just happened to walk by. I mean, we literally might have been walking out, and we kind of just started BSing with these guys, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're this kind of a small company out of Canada. We've developed this tissue testing." And it was a few grad students out of where was it?
Yeah, it started out. I don't even remember where at in Canada. I know it's the far like east end of Canada
Was it that?
because they're like 4 hours ahead of us.
Okay. Yeah, they're just a bunch of grad students who started working on this, or they were grad students, and then after I think after they finished, is that right?
Yeah, so they
I'm
it
probably
started
butchering
out
the
as
story.
just a no, no, you're
Sorry
good.
if they're listening.
It started out as like a research paper for I don't know I don't think it was like their master's thesis or anything, but it was a research project, and there were I want to say 2 or 3 of those guys that were in on it, and so it was a group project. Once they did really well, and then they started just talking amongst themselves. They're like, "Hey, maybe this is actually a good business opportunity. Like we've done all the research as far as developing, on the computer side, all the different algorithms that it takes to take a certain spectrum light reflectance, correlate that to a certain nutrient and then a nutrient level. So I mean, it's complex on the back end, but it's all computer. Number crunching essentially. So what? After that, they started entering a lot of these like investor competitions where you pitch a product, and yeah, almost like a Shark Tank type product.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
or theme, I guess, for a show. And it wasn't Shark Tank, but it was, I guess, the Canadian version of Shark Tank. And
yeah,
they actually did really well. It
yeah,
sounded like so.
yeah. No, it's been a good tool that we have used. We can get one thing that's good too is as soon as the samples are ran, instantly uploads to the computer, shows the levels. We have the field boundaries where we pulled the samples. Those are saved in there so we know. And I mean, we can get a yearly, weekly report of all these that we can present with growers. Or, we have trials out there that we pull tissues on. It's very user friendly, and it's been a good tool for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think that pretty much summarizes what we've seen out of the Picketa LENS unit for a tissue sample scanner, and then on insects, like yeah, coming into tassel time, scouts have really got to be watching several different insects, mites, but also really looking at the western bean, which I know we've started to see some egg masses in the area. So
Yeah, yeah. Last episode I was saying I had to go recheck a field, so I did. I did actually go. So they actually did not really flare up, as we say. They kind of just stayed where they were. The activity was about the same. They really didn't do a whole lot of leaf damage. So, and then I actually checked it again Monday, which was yesterday. It was about the same. So that gave me enough confidence to say, we're gonna hold off for now on pulling the trigger on anything because I bet you probably by next, I would say next Tuesday or Wednesday, we're going to see a lot more fields tasseling. Around here, we're starting to see some, especially that earlier planted corn. So, that it makes sense to me. I mean, that like I talked before, I think those beneficials are obviously the mites have showed up, but I think those beneficials are still working on them. It's kind of helped. It has been there's been some humidity in the mornings and even during the day a little bit. That's helped keep them below thresholds. It doesn't right now. It's hot. It gets hot during the day, but it's not 90 degrees by 8 a.m. So that's it takes a little bit to warm up, which it's slowing them down a little bit. So which is working in our favor for sure. That way we're not having to make multiple applications, and the tasseling time is critical. And I think we hit on it a little bit last episode, but if we can make one pass with the plane and still be effective in all phases, that's huge. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you run a plane out there, $10 an acre. I mean, this year, $10 an acre is when things are tight. I mean, that's one of those things that can really help save on your costs when input's already high. So I mean, we can go in with miticide if we have any other insects, any other insecticides, and if we decide to hit it with the fungicide as well or foliar. I mean, we can mix a lot of things in the tank.
yeah, and we talked about that threshold aspect of these management decisions last week a little bit too. But I mean, it's very true, especially with $4 corn. It's like, okay, I got $25 in a miticide and I've got another 10 for application and I might have to make another application. It's like, well, pretty soon you need just to justify that, pulling the trigger on treating those mites. Pretty soon it's going to have to save you 8 bushels, that you would have lost had you not pulled the trigger. So definitely good to keep that in mind. And I mean, yeah, it's also the same with Western bean as we start looking at these egg masses. It's kind
Yeah,
of the same thing. It's like they're going to have to rob 8 bushels, that you would have had out there, and just to break even on a lot of like a steward application.
yeah,
So with Western bean, I know a lot of guys. I mean, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll figure a percent of plants out there in the field that have it, and that 1 to 2%. They've always said like 2 to 3 bushel is basically what you're going to lose if you're at that 1 to 2%. So even at $6 corn, usually 1 or 2% is not quite enough to pull the trigger. Definitely not at $4 corn.
yeah,
So you start getting above that into 3 and 4%, and then then you are closer to that eight bushel range, and typically those egg masses are just going to go on that. They're all those as soon as they hatch. Or let me back up. So right before they hatch, they turn kind of that dark purplish color. Okay, and then that's when if I'm going to treat, that's when you want to do it. Obviously, steward with the 2 weeks residual widens that window a little bit, so you can maybe be a little bit before that, but you don't want to be too far before that. And you can actually kill, you can kill the cutworm after it's hatched while it's making its way down to the ear. So there's a few days there too that takes that cutworm to actually get into the ear, and then once it gets down into the ear and into the silks, like then it's kind of protected.
Yeah.
So that's why timing's so important with Western bean, is because it's kind of protected early on because it's not hatched yet. So you want to use a residual product, or if you can time it perfectly, right when they're purple, and put out something that's going to have effectiveness for like 2 or 3 days, then you can get a pretty good kill on them too. But you really risk if there's, and that's what we've always seen is a lot of our, whether it was when the corn was planted or in like cooler springs, a lot of times, because these insects are based off of growing degree units too. I mean that's kind of how we measure the timing of when they show up. And we saw unevenness in the corn, and a lot of times we see that with the Western bean egg laying too. Like there's a lot of unevenness. So if you do try to get just a one post application to save a few bucks, a lot of times, even if you can time that first one right, there's a second flush of them that come later that for whatever reason that egg mass was just laid a little later. So that's why, most of the time, if you're in that 3 to 4%, it's just worth it to spend a little extra money and get a good residual product like Steward.
Yeah. Yeah, usually we'll use Steward if we do have rootworm beetles show up. Yeah, another product that works well is Vanacore. It's a lower use rate. Used to be Prevathon, but it's a higher concentrated version. It's also a product they use for hopper control as well. With the Western bean, there's some challenges with that, and the first difference between that and mites is there's actually like a threshold though with Western bean, so you can go off numbers. With like I talked about the mites, it's such a subjective and objective call because it's like it's there, but how bad is it? Do we need to treat? Do we not? With Western beans, so we always want to wait to, especially when we're using the residual products, we need to wait till all the leaves are out, so tassel time. Because if we go too early, those top leaves are not protected, and those worms might not eat where the chemical is, the insecticide. So then you just wasted your money. Because basically what they're going to do, they're going to hatch, and then they're going to feed on the pollen until they get big enough, then they'll work their way down to the ear. So I'm guessing pretty much 99% agronomists know, but I guess you never know. There might be somebody that doesn't, but But if you're a farmer and you're kind of scouting yourself, it's pretty easy for the most part. I mean, you go in, let's say just round numbers, 5 spots. So I mean, I guess the tried and true way. Let's say you go in 5 spots. You want to check 20 plants in a row on the same row, and you want to count each plant that has a egg mass on it. So you have to look at the upper. They're going to lay them in the upper leaves. They're small. So since they need to feed on the pollen, so that's why so like you see Pioneer, like the AML trait, the
Leptra.
Leptra. So with that trait, because we don't have to treat for Western bean because they'll eat that in the pollen. There's a trait that will control them, and as of now, I haven't heard any resistance or anything. But it's easy to kill those worms. So after those 5 spots, we're going to check, and then we're going to get a percent of how many plants. So looking back at old research, they used to be around 8% was the threshold, but like you were talking, like if it's about 5, I think you need to pull the trigger. And it's all about who you're working with too, or your tolerance. So there's some guys that really want to get to that number before they spend any money, and there's other guys that say I do not want a damn worm in any ears. So
Yeah, it's not a fun thing to see later on, like in the
no,
R stages. And you go out there, and you pull back to count kernels, and that you've got 15 kernels gone and a big fat worm sitting on the end of the ear. Like it's not fun to look at. And it's kind of
no,
like weeds. Like
yeah. So the reason why it sounds like a small percentage, but what they'll do, they'll be, I don't know how many eggs. I mean, there's probably 15 to 20 eggs, I suppose, in one mass ish.
Yeah, probably.
But they'll go within at least what, a 10-foot radius. They'll go from plant to plant. So that's why that lower, it's a lower percentage for a threshold, because you'd think it'd be like, well, why is it such a low percent per plant? Like, that doesn't seem bad. But you got to remember, there's multiple eggs on one mass, and they're going to move from plant to plant. So that's kind of why the percent is so low. And then, obviously doing the math, I'm sure there's somebody that has. I mean, by the time they get in the ears, they eat around, whatever that chemical cost is, convert that to bushels, and bushels per acre and price per bushel. So that's kind of where we get that percent of a threshold, where it makes economical sense to treat. Some of the things I've seen over the last few years, you'll walk in and you'll count and not really see anything, but you'll see an egg mass as you're walking out, and you're like, well, shit, should I count that one?
Yeah.
Another one is like, let's say you'll go to four spots, you don't see anything, but then you go to that last spot and you find two or three. So then again, you're like, well, 80% of the field I didn't see any, but here it's technically 12%. So it's like, do you average those out? That's a tough decision that the agronomist has to make. And usually we need to scout basically right as it's tasseling, until everything gets pollinated. If you get close to that threshold, if you don't like worms, we just recommend just spray it. It's hard to put a number on everything at the end of the year, but then you get there and you're seeing worms. That is the most stressful time as an agronomist, when you recommend to not treat something, because it's always a cover your ass deal.
Right.
And it just, you sleep better at night knowing it got treated, and if and you were timely, and everything should be okay. But when you make that decision, like, hey, I'm not seeing anything out here, like, I've looked hard and I haven't seen anything, like, we don't need to treat. And it kind of gets the farmer a little worked up a little bit. It's like it's kind of a weird deal, because he wants to spend the money, but he doesn't want worms, but you're not really seeing them either.
Right. Well, and that's where it's nice going back, multiple weeks in a row, to where you can, I mean, typically what we'll do is if we go out this time of year, we've got a little bit of time before we have to pull the trigger on Western bean treatments. So, I mean, we've got 2 or 3 leaves left. If they, for whatever reason, are a little bit ahead maturity wise and hatch now, like you said, they're going to die, because there's no pollen to feed off of, and they can't eat the leaves. Okay, so there's no food. They're basically just going to starve and die. But if we go out there now and we're seeing, like an all white egg mass that's not hatched yet, and will probably be a few days to a week before it is hatched. Let's say that we only saw one this week. Okay, so we're at 1% for the whole field. Well, if we go back next week and find 2 more, a lot of times we'll just add, it'll be accumulative. So then we'll be at 3%. And if we go back the next week and we find a different 5, then all of a sudden we're at 8%. So again, we usually don't do that for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row where you keep accumulating, because you do have to take into account, that first week, those are probably all dead now, because they hatched early. There's no pollen, and it wouldn't make sense to treat those anyways. So there's a little bit of that to keep in mind too, that you don't want to just, if you keep going back out, let's say 3 times in a week, and each day you find 3%, like, realistically it's probably closer to 9%, and there's a lot more you're not seeing. So make sure, if you are doing multiple visits in a week, or even back-to-back weeks, like, do add that percentage up.
It's time for a crop nutrition plan that gets more return from every drop. starting with Pro Germinator from AgriLiquid, a complete phosphorus fertilizer product that includes nitrogen, potassium, and iron. More than 30 years of research shows that lower application rates of Pro Germinator often outperform other sources of fertilizer. With AgriLiquid's Pro Germinator, you can apply less and expect more. Find out more at agriliquid.com.
Yeah, and I think the last thing on Western bean cutworm is that those egg masses, and hopefully these pictures that we add in here help help distinguish what's a Western bean egg mass versus like a European corn borer, because we do have some other egg masses out there that can look similar, but usually that Western bean egg mass will have, it's almost like an hourglass shape on it that's a little darker colored. So, and sometimes it just looks like a dot, until they get bigger. But yeah, usually that's going to be a Western bean then. European corn borer, those egg masses are going to be kind of yellowish, a little bit more yellow than what the Western bean cutworm is going to be. So, almost like a creamy white color, with a little more on the yellow side. So
yeah, there was one of the fields. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but back in it was probably like 2021 maybe. There was a field north of Hagler that it was crazy. I mean, it was 30% of plants, maybe more. I mean, it was there was an egg mass on every third plant. Everywhere I stopped, I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, if I miss this, I should be fired.
Yeah,
I
don't
mean,
think I've
I was
ever
like,
seen
holy
that
cow.
high.
Yeah, it was
That's
one
crazy.
field.
I think probably the highest I've ever seen is 10%. I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. So yeah, that was a no doubter to spray.
Yeah. Yep. Easy decision.
But it seems like they do come in pockets, or there'll be pockets of areas. It's like, you go back through your notes. It's like, well, this kind of area of the county, like we sprayed pretty much all of them. Where maybe you go 10, 15, 20 miles away, they didn't really have very much. So it kind of seems like every year it kind of goes in pockets. What was it last year? Well, we'll get him on the podcast. Jonathan Ferrari. I was seeing the same thing. I was legit just like searching through the corn like to find an egg mass, and I could not find one. And you start having your inner dialogue, like, man, am I missing something? Like, am I blind? Do I need glasses or something? Like you're driving yourself crazy because you cannot. After 20 fields, I did not find one egg mass. And he called me that next day. He's like, hey, are you seeing anything? I was like, honestly, no. He's like, okay. Because he was thinking the same thing. He's like, I'm going crazy trying to find an egg mass. And, had maybe a few show up later, but it was just one of those years they didn't, they weren't. And it was kind of he was scouting in kind of the same area I was. And it's like, well, over west I found some. But really right around this area, I have not found a single one. And he's like, I am seeing the same thing. So that gave me confidence and made me not feel like I was crazy.
Right. Absolutely. No, and it's just like anything. It's very dependent on, that year-to-year weather too, on how well they survive or, I definitely have noticed that too. It's usually a certain area of the county. It's not just the whole county.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's the right way to scout. I like to be more aggressive. I like to actually like, even maybe not necessarily do like, okay, here's my 20 plants, but like I will more so aggressively. I want to find them. I'm trying to find them. So I mean, that's that way I know for sure if they're there, the presence. I don't just look at those 20 plants. Like I'm more just I'm trying to find them.
Right. No, then it's better to be that way, I think, because you're not as likely to miss something. And then like you said, that's the last thing you want is for the farmer to be like, wow, why do I have so many worms in my ears? And it's like, well, didn't find them. Or we actually had an intern that was just checking for a few years ago when we worked for Gotzi Precision Ag. We had an intern that didn't know you had to check in the top, like all the way up the leaves. He was just looking at like the couple leaves above the ear leaf, like almost like head height. And it's like, oh no, you have to like reach up, pull it down, look at those leaves that are above your head too, because a lot of times the egg masses are going to be on that 13th, 14th leaf. And typically that's over 6 feet for us. So yeah, you definitely got to look, pull plants down. You're not just like going in there eye level and looking at what you can see, without touching a plant.
Yeah, especially when you have these taller silage varieties, man, your neck starts to hurt at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that's probably good on the insect side. I mean, lastly, it was kind of nice. I think we're finally doing an episode in time to actually help guys. We're doing it far enough ahead of decision-making time. I felt like a lot of our planner ones are kind of like as we finished. So
Yeah,
but
yeah. Well, I guess
it's
another
the
one.
frustration of being busy, I guess, at the same time as you're trying to, put out some of the agronomy lessons we've learned over the years.
Yeah.
But did you have one more thing on insects?
Yeah, I guess we didn't really talk about rootworm beetles. I'm just going to touch on them. So, not really in the sand. Don't have to worry about it. From what I understand, we did some work with Elson Shields, who has the I know it's not a popular word around here, but nematodes. But they're beneficial nematodes that attack the larvae. But anyway, like within the sand, the sand is way too abrasive to the rootworm larva. So that's why, we don't really necessarily need treated corn in sandier ground. But anyway, this week, or I guess yesterday, saw a couple. I mean, literally a couple. I thought it was going to be a lot worse. My brother that I scout for, he was in the pivot road on Sunday, and he texted me and he said he had a bunch of them on his pickup when he pulled out of the field. But when I actually got into the field, I mean, it was you'd have to search and maybe find one, and it's kind of hard with those because you're kind of going off of a per plant basis, but there might be 30 on one plant and then nothing for a while. And for next year, it's a big thing for next year. There's not much we can do now. I mean, they fed on the roots. If we got some resistance to the genetics, things like that. I mean, they're when they come out, the biggest thing, we need to control them before they lay eggs. And also what they'll do is they'll really start attacking the silks when the silks start coming out, especially those ones that kind of come out earlier than the other ones. That's where you'll see a bunch per plant. So I can't even remember what the threshold is. I think it's 2. I think it's maybe if you can average 3 per plant, if you can actually catch them. With Stewart, I think in the past their guarantee, I guess you could say, is less than 1 per plant for 14 to 21 days.
Right. Well, and if you've gotten down below that, 1 per plant, like that's pretty good, because as you mentioned, like the damage at this point of finding the adult beetles is, the damage is already done. There was already the root feeding, that stunted growth, maybe have some standability issues if they were really, really bad, and you've lost some of those like V3, V4, V5 nodal roots, those ones that really help the integrity of the plant stand in our awesome fall winds that we get at the end of at the end of the summer. But you're really controlling for next year at that point anyways. You're trying to decrease those egg masses, that they're going to go plant or that they're going to go lay.
Yeah. A lot of times, you'll have a problem because we'll get, the big vegetative spike, let's say between V6 and V15. Well, we'll get a wind, weather event that comes through, bring some high winds, hard rain. I mean, that corn's going to be laying over just because of the lack of root integrity from the larvae. So, then you're going to know that they're there. A lot of times, right after that, you'll see some beetles. You'll see pockets of corn that might go down because of it. But yeah, it's more for next year. For a this year control, it's mainly for silk clipping, which is going to inhibit pollination. But it's got to be real bad.
Yeah, I think I've heard the 2 per plant before, and that's probably true. I don't know if it is at $4 corn. It's just really hard to judge, what kind of factor they're actually going to have on on yield with the clipping silks.
Yeah,
So
I
I
think
think it is kind of an estimate more than anything. But yeah, I'd say definitely if you got 3 per plant, yeah, that's worth treating.
the one thing Elson told me is, and it seems to ring true, but if we do get some rains, if we're maybe a little overly wet, even normally wet, a lot of those larvae will drown out, and we usually don't have too big of a problem. The biggest problem comes when we're super dry and have a good spring. Well, maybe I shouldn't say good, but probably warmer than usual. They they're not sitting in water very much or high moisture. And that rang true in 2022. That was the worst I've ever seen. It was bad. I mean, it was about this time, and there was just beetles everywhere. And we had a hell of a time trying to figure out what to do, because then we had mites coming, but we wanted to wait. But we're trying to figure out if were the beetles bad enough that we could wait to put Stewart on, because, also the Western bean. And I think we ended up just making a couple applications just because they got so bad. I mean, there was leaf damage from rootworm beetles, which you don't see a whole lot. I mean, the silks were just absolutely getting destroyed. It was crazy. But after that, I think we've done a good job of managing things with insecticide and timing and everything. And conditions have been more favorable after that. But
Right. Well, and I think that has a lot of guys, mainly more out east, where I think they have a little higher populations to begin with. But with such a mild winter, a lot of times, we do kill off some of those eggs or larvae, from getting cold or a lot of snow, or since we had such a mild winter, it's kind of makes you nervous. It might be like volunteer corn this spring, where
Yeah.
it's just like everything that was there survived.
Yeah.
And so that could be definitely something to really watch for this year.
yeah, I'm definitely nervous about it.
So, yep.
I haven't seen much yet, but I'm sure they'll be coming here in the next couple weeks.
Next Gen Fertilizers is introducing SeedLink, the game-changing planter box product that's revolutionizing corn planter box products. SeedLink delivers uniform emergence like never before, so every seed gets the perfect start. It's packed with phosphorus, humic and fulvic acids, amino acids, and beneficial biology. And the best part, SeedLink is half the cost of most of the other competitive products, even with more in it. We're not just applying biology here, we're actually applying biology with a food source. Use SeedLink on your corn today and get better emergence, better results, and all for a better price. So, real quick, let's touch on maybe some bacterial and fungal diseases that we've been seeing or looking for.
Yeah, it helps. We're in a semi-arid climate. We definitely don't have to deal with much of the diseases like everybody else does. One of the biggest ones for us is bacterial leaf streak. I think we're kind of pretty much in the mecca of what we call BLS.
Yeah, evidently we started it.
Yeah,
is what I've heard.
Yeah.
They're actually starting to get it down. Last August I was down in that southwest Kansas, Oklahoma Panhandle area, and they were starting to get it down there. I know, but still, like, not near as bad as what we've seen here. We've seen it go into Nebraska a little bit. I don't know that there's really any certain varieties that have really stood out that seem to get it worse.
They have ratings.
Companies
have ratings, and
but it just seems like just about everything has it.
Yeah.
It's really not. Well, and when it started out too, which I don't even know, it wasn't that long ago, was when they first actually named it bacterial leaf streak, like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe 7. And they, all the universities and all the seed companies were like, oh, it's not detrimental to yield at all. It's basically, don't even worry about it. And fungicides won't treat it because it's bacterial. So you can't really put anything on it. We're doing a copper trial actually on one field this year. I'm kind of excited to see if that's going to at least minimize the leaf area of the BLS. But I've always kind of been surprised by that. It's like, really, no yield loss. If it was gray leaf spot or tan spot, or if it was some other kind of fungal disease, every university and every seeds or crop scout would say, oh, that's going to hurt yield, you got to spray. So I don't know why the field or the leaf area conversation is starting to happen more now. I've actually seen, quite a few guys flip flop on that of saying like, okay, yeah, it does actually hurt yield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. They think they're actually not just pushing it aside.
Yeah.
But, a lot of times, especially where I've seen it more heavier this year, I mean, what it's doing, it's looking for an open wound. So, I mean, definitely the plants I got hailed early and those lower leaves are damaged. It's definitely came on there. Some of the stuff that didn't really get hailed, it's not bad. Maybe the lowest couple leaves. And historically, usually we see it come on. You can see it come on early, and then it kind of just hangs out for a while, and then maybe kind of later on, it kind of starts moving up. It can get severe enough. I mean, it's cannibalizing the leaves. But those lesions, they kind of turn that brown, tannish brown. They're kind of all over the place compared to a gray leaf spot where it's like distinctively triangular, not triangular, rectangular,
Right. Yeah.
more grayish color leaves. So that's it. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the two. Anytime I've seen gray leaf spot, it shows up late and it hangs out on the lower 2 or 3 leaves and it never does anything. I don't think I've ever had to treat for gray leaf spot.
Yeah, it's very uncommon. I'd say, maybe in the last 5 years, maybe just a handful of fields that, that I think I've actually recommended treatment on it. And the other distinguishing factor is that bacterial leaf streak can kind of go across the inner veins on the leaf, whereas gray leaf spot really doesn't. I mean, like you said, it's very much of a straight line down. It won't jump over to a different vein like BLS does.
Yeah, and it's not going to be kind of just random shapes. That's an easy way to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely something with corn on corn because 99% of the time you have rotated corn, you don't see any.
Mm-hmm. Or it's very minimal.
Yeah. It's definitely when you got rotate or when you don't have rotation is when it's going to show up. I mean, really, other than that, just being in the environment we're at with heat and wind and lack of rain. No tar spot. I don't know if that could probably survive out here.
Yeah,
I don't know how far west it's moved so far. Is it central Nebraska? Maybe.
Yeah, I think I saw something on X the other day actually that there was some found in like western Kansas. So basically, Colorado, like not far from Colorado. But the other thing we have going for us at our higher elevation, at least on northeast Colorado, is that we do get a little cooler at night, and I think that's another between the temperature fluctuations and the lack of humidity, which granted in an irrigated circle it's pretty dang humid in there, but I think it's just the increased respiration from the plant overnight when we get down to 64, 65 degrees, when in like out east, they're staying at that, 70% humidity for maybe a whole week solid, at least 70%, if not higher. And they're also staying at that 75 at night.
At least.
So
sometimes probably in the 80s.
Yeah. And so like that's prime, that's a prime area for fungal diseases to grow. So I think that helps us too. Even beyond the humidity.
Yeah, you get around here, usually at night, you're probably wearing a sweater. I remember we went to, we don't go back east, I guess you could say a lot, but a couple years ago, we went to Omaha for a meeting. That was that in July, I think, maybe August? And it was, sun and went down, it's probably 9 or 10 o'clock. We were going out to do something, and we walked outside those hotel doors. It was like, holy shit. Yeah. It's just like, it feels like it's noon.
Yeah, you could go put the jacket we brought back in the hotel room because we did not need it. So.
Yeah. For fungicides, a lot of guys just kind of use, I guess the one I know with like the spray plane guys we work with. I know they like to use Absolute Max, which is kind of just a broad spectrum. It's going to cover a lot of things, but a lot of times we use fungicides for plant health. Really, I mean there's some guys that are 100% believers just for that aspect, and other guys don't really see a benefit. And it's probably one of those, is it going to pay 3 out of 5 years? We're just trying to keep that plant healthier longer as we start getting into the fall. Prevent that ethylene production, especially in hailed corn. That's usually where we're seeing fungicides mainly being used, not for any sort of fungus, but for plant health.
Right. Well, and I mean, as cheap as some of those Strybillion fungicides are, like a Quadris or a Quilt, excuse me, or like a Quilt XL, I mean, you can pretty easily justify a $3 to $4 an acre purchase. The other thing though that I'm curious about, so 3 years ago in our trial results, we actually we did a canopy comparison where we had headline EC is what it was back then. Now there's just headline SC, but that the headline EC actually did lower canopy. We just flew it on with the plane, and it lowered canopy temperature for about 10 days there when we were monitoring it. So really cool, right? I mean, that if you can lower that canopy temperature, especially when we are getting 100-degree days, like that helps. Even if it's just a couple degrees, you're going to stress that plant less. But one of the cool things that we've been learning from BW Fusion and our territory rep there is the reason you're able to lower that canopy temperature, or you're able to get some crop health benefits from a fungicide, especially that Strybillion group, is you're actually forcing the plant to close the stomata. So what does that also mean? Well, it means you're not photosynthesizing. So I'm guessing where we have seen yield advantages from those fungicides like that from a plant health aspect, I'm guessing what we're going to find is that the benefit of closing that stomata just outweighs the loss of photosynthesis, because we did see positive yield results. But I know that's been something that they've talked a lot about, is maybe some of these other biostimulants out there, some of their products where it's like, well, we keep the stomata open, but we still decrease ethylene production. So definitely something to look at, and maybe you can get the best of both worlds with products like theirs, like an Amino or a Relax RX, and definitely something we're looking at from a product trial standpoint.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't want your corn growing when it's 100 degrees. It's more damage. I mean, that obviously there are some like drought conditions. It's like it's curled up. It's not looking good, but it's like that's why some guys is just go check your corn or whatever in the morning, because by this afternoon it's not going to look good, and you think you're underwatering. It's like there's moisture in the soil. Like it's saying, you know what, it's way too hot. I mean, it's a defense mechanism. It's saying, this is way too hot. Like, I can't be growing right now. We run the sprinkler across, and it opens back up. It cools the canopy for a while, but it's like, well, I don't know. I don't think that's what we need to be doing. Obviously, if you're short of water, you need to put water on, but you don't want to go against what the plant wants to do, I think.
Right. No, I agree. It's no different than us. Like, we'd rather scout the fields in the morning too before it gets hot, because even if we have a jug of water, like, it's
miserable.
There's a lot of there's a lot of just brutal environments that we have to deal with, and our plants just can't pick up roots and walk out and go in the shade somewhere. They're out there all day, every day. And I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can do to help mitigate that stress. So, because it's all abiotic stress. And that's what, it kind of all comes full circle. And that's why I love fertility, because the better fertility you have out there, the better root system, the better, resistance you have to a lot of this abiotic stress. So if you can just build a better factory, a better plant, it's going to be a lot more resilient when it comes to all these extreme environments. Whether it's a little bit of drought stress because pivot broke down and it was down for 20 hours when it should have been running because it was 105 degrees, or maybe it's just that 105 degrees with low holding capacity soils. There's all kinds of different challenges we get into when we're talking that a crucial time, getting into that reproductive time frame there into July and into August, and just a better plant from the very beginning of the year is going to show up more now. That's a lot of the benefit you get.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of comes back to the 4 R's with, fertility. We got everything we need right there to, like you said, build the best factory you can. Who's going to survive a epidemic? The person who's in shape, taking care of themselves, or somebody who's super overweight and not healthy. That's a pretty easy comparison. Make them as healthy as you can. Let them do the work.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Anything else?
I don't think so.
I think we covered quite a bit here. Always run long when we get to talk a little more agronomy, it seems like. But that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, well, hopefully, everyone was able to take away something from this. And if you guys want to send us photos that you're seeing, or your crop scout sends you a photo and they're not sure what it is, please use us as a resource as we continue to make these management decisions. Coming right up into Tassel time. And as always, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And we'll see you next time.